Well, I feel like episode 1 of Dandadan really sold me on the just pure insanity of this writer, just absolutely off the walls, bonkers, no filters, crude, weird, all that kind of stuff mixed into one with some crazy action stuff. I feel like episode 2 sold me on the chemistry. I really like Ayase and now Okarun. I like their chemistry so far. I mean, at the end of the last episode, there was this sort of establishment of the two of them being connected by the circumstances. They both feel at fault in some way for everything that happened, and they both want to do right by kind of undoing this whole situation. So it was established then, but episode 2 is where we kind of see the two of them hanging out and just being two dorks. Like, they're just two dorks that are just pushing each other's buttons. Now, there's a side of me that almost sees, like, some of this stuff as kind of cruel. They're kind of being mean at each other, mean-spirited. But I think that sort of jabbing and that teasing back and forth is really something that's breaking down those barriers. The two of them have issues. The two of them have issues. Ayase is kind of mean. She, like he says, lacks tact. Like, she's very blunt about things. She's not very considerate of his feelings. But at the same time, he's a little bit too closed off. And thus, her teasing, her lack of tact is sort of breaking down those barriers. And the two of them are just kind of bashing each other. Like, there's sort of this idea of the two of them breaking down those barriers and coming closer just by them beating each other up. It's so great. And it's not too much to the point where it kind of feels bad. It's not like teasing Master Takagi-san where it's like bullying. Like, it's literally bullying at the very beginning of that series. I love it. I think they're just absolutely two dorks. Like, her getting upset about the idea that his name is literally the name of the person that she's in love with, this actor. And then going right into the whole barrier and how he's set on fire at first, and so he's afraid of going through it. And the moment he gets through it, she's over there like, save. It's just so dorky. Your hair is like a granny. Again, all that stuff inside the house of them just constantly just going back and forth. But again, it's establishing these connections. I think that whole scene with the bedroom is really, well, actually in the hallway because he doesn't want to go in there. That whole segment is really great because, again, I think the two of these individuals, well, some might not see Ayase as having some sort of problems in the, I guess, the weight that Okarun has. There's still problems. She's a little bit too blunt. She is very blunt with how she talks, and I think that's kind of off-putting for a lot of people, especially somebody like Okarun. And even though he is sort of divulging his discomfort, like she's talking about the fact that the whole reason this whole thing happened is because you kept talking to me. You should have not kept talking to me. That's why this whole situation happened. That's why I challenged you. That's why you lost your wiener. He literally finally realized that he lost his wiener. It took... That's one of those things as a man, it's like, I don't see how you don't realize that very quickly. Like, there's just... Not that I always think about that thing down there. It's just there's a presence, and the lack thereof it is like, why would it? I guess the lack thereof it. I don't know. I'd never lost it, so I don't really know how that would feel. But it's like, why is your? I mean, after all the conversations about the wiener being taken and everything like that, you would assume that eventually he would have kind of, I don't know, nudged down there or thought about it. But now he takes him until she points it out, like, let me see it. You said that you took it. Let me see it. No, I'm not gonna show you. It's actually God. It's like, what, dude? Really, dude? And again, Ayase just starts teasing him about it. Like, it's so mean, especially for a dude. It's so mean for the idea of a female, like, literally laughing at you for losing it. But it's like, again, it's that aspect of how dumb the two of them are. It just turns into this stupid little spout. But again, the idea that her pressing the idea that the whole reason that we did that is because you kept pursuing me. You kept talking to me. And it turns into a heartfelt moment where Okarun's like, well, I didn't want to miss out on that chance. I thought that if I let you go, I would miss out on an opportunity to have a friend. Again, this is somebody that doesn't have friends, and he was seeking the aliens because he was hoping they'd be his friends. And now the moment that, Ayase and they're connecting this connection, he wants to protect her because of that. Here, he's literally saying, I didn't want to miss out if you possibly could be a friend. But again, it turns into like a joke. It turns these jabs, and eventually her being kind-hearted and the idea of saying, well, just talk to me like normal. Let's just talk like normal. Talk to me like you typically do with your little cultist stuff. And he says, ugly. You're ugly. And again, it just turned into the jabs. I love it. I absolutely love it. And just towards the later part, I think that chemistry sort of extends to the action scenes too. When you have the two of them, I was saying how in the first episode, I like the idea that two of them have skill. They have an ability. They have some sort of power that they can add to the fight itself. And it has a nice gimmick to it. The idea of her having the psychic powers, able to move him around, able to hold things still, push things, pull things, whatever, protect themselves. And then him over here, he's just brute strength, that he can't control yet. But it's a nice combination. It's almost like the spellcaster and the frontliner. That's kind of what they're going for here. But then trying to figure out the situation, just having those little moments where he's like, you're a genius. I know. It's great. Again, chemistry, fantastic. I can blab on and on about it. I just think that this episode was a nice example of how I might actually really enjoy this as a couple. Like, this is one of those rare shows where I think the chemistry is just going to probably be like 50% of why I enjoy it. I mean, it's similar to something like Legacy Coil. Legacy Coil, the chemistry between the two characters, the two main characters, Chisato and Takana, I think her name was, the two of them were just so perfect. Like, they pulled it off. But no, the rest of the episode itself, besides the chemistry itself, we have a couple things that were established in this episode. Yes, of course, they went to her grandma's house. And I'm assuming going to the grandma's house, since they really quickly established that he can still transform during the day, I guess they're going there for the sake of, yes, for her to get a change of clothes. Yes, because she can't leave his side. She's got to constantly be holding back the Turbo Granny. But I am also kind of wondering if maybe the grandma is supposed to possibly figure out a way to keep him from transforming back, or at least being overcome by this, because yeah, right now we're establishing the two of them cannot separate, which can facilitate the fact that they have to always be around each other, which will add to the story. But I'm kind of curious if that will get old. There's a side of me that almost wonders if that gimmick might get old. This constantly, every time she has to kind of look away or do something else, he's changing back and going, and I gotta say, hurry, change me back. I was like, at some point towards the later part, not that it got old, but there's a side of me that almost thought, I wonder if this will get old. I mean, so far they've used it in ways that are comedic. The idea that she wants to change and he closes the door and immediately changes back, rushes back in. It can be comedic, but at the same time, there is a wonder that I have here. Is this going to get old? We might end up finding out in the next episode how they could possibly hold it back. It might be a thing where maybe the grandma will teach him something in order to keep it under check. Right now, Ayase's out. So my assumption is that we have to figure something out right now. Otherwise, and I'm assuming the grandma's probably going to show up. The grandma will probably be the one that kind of holds it back, or she'll regain consciousness at the last moment or something. But again, I'm curious what they'll do with that, because I have fears. I'll just say that I have fears. The Sumo alien, I have to admit, I was a little bit let down on the Sumo alien, because I think episode 1 was absolutely incredible animation. There was still some good animations in this episode, but there was a side of me that almost felt a little bit let down by the Sumo alien, just because it was this massive CGI alien thing that they kept the frames on it a little bit too long. Like, there is an element that, okay, if you're going to use CGI, at least make it subtle. And I felt like they weren't subtle enough with this particular model, because it just felt like they were keeping the camera on it for far too long. Like, you having these conversations happening and it's just constantly sticking on it, and it's like, please stop. You're ruining my immersion. You're making me actually notice it. I don't want to notice it. I want to ignore it, but you keep showing it. But it was still fine. I think they had some really good artistic shots with it still. And yes, the fight itself was still cool. I think the cool thing they did with this particular part was the idea of course, Okuron wanting to finally step up and try to use partial amounts of the power, still keeping his mind in check. Now, the question mark that I really have with that whole situation is that, yes, he wants to allow himself to be taken over, wants her to see if she can possibly control just his mind so that he can remain conscious to what he is. And it kind of turns this whole thing where he turns into a really depressed monster. And I'm like, is this going to be a thing where sometimes whenever he lets himself get possessed, he has a different personality? Is it that she's not tapping into the right part of his brain? So maybe she's just capturing the side that's overly emotional and not able to kind of put, barriers up there. So it's like his full depressed side. And he's got like some weird slang that he's saying over and over again. He's like, yo. And she's like, stop saying that. I don't know what that's about. My assumption early on was that maybe possibly the Turbo Granny wasn't the only thing inside of him, and that there's a different personality of a different spirit that's in there, or maybe it's the true nature of that spirit, because I mentioned the idea that Turbo Granny was like a spirit that took the form of this granny, not that the spirit is a granny. So yeah, you could probably think that might be the true personality of the spirit again, or it could just be part of Okuron's brain is still kind of intact, and it's the depressed side, or a side that wants to be a gangster or something. I don't know. It was weird. I don't know if it's just maybe just for jokes, or possibly they'll get into it later on, or if it's just not that deep. But yeah, cool idea there. Just knock out the leg, knock him down, do that kind of stuff. I do really like how Ayase is using her powers. Again, it seems like a simple concept of somebody that's just able to be a spirit user, able to use telekinesis and whatnot. But they're kind of using it in an interesting way, in the idea that she has to constantly keep him in check while also trying to use her powers against the monster. And that was the entire thing, you know. Hey, have to keep him in control, throw the thing down. Oh crap, I got them mixed up, so I ended up throwing him down, and then going into her being knocked into the gate. She's the entire time trying to keep him under control while she's fighting the thing, which is pretty cool. I think Ayase in this episode was super cool. Like, there is a side of me that kind of wonders how long it's going to take before we actually have Okuran do something, because it feels like so far most of the time it's Ayase saving their butts. That happened with the first episode. They were fighting the Serpos. Yes, technically when he first showed up and Granny was going berserk, she was ripping things up. But when he got control, he wasn't doing much. Like, he's like, I want to help her, but he got his butt kicked. And then he gave up. And then she had to drop kick the thing. And then going into this episode, literally she's pulling his butt everywhere. Like, the entire time they're getting attacked, she's constantly pulling him out of danger over and over again. This girl is like keeping him safe. And then finally, when he decides to kind of step forward, yes, she kind of slips up and messes him up, and yes, he gets some shots in, but he's not able to control his body, and it's too much for him. And so in the end, it turns into her basically having to 1v1 this thing as it's beating the crap out of her. I'm assuming she's using her power to keep herself from being like crushed, but then eventually turns to, yeah, she finally got her little shot there. She's behind the gate, pulls him up, grabs the talisman, takes the thing out. Like, Ayase's a bad dude. I'm just gonna say it. Ayase's a bad. I'm really liking her character. It's funny because it's one of those series where I assume at face value it's a series about the nerd boy being OP, which, yes, I'm assuming eventually that's gonna happen. But so far this series with these 2 episodes, it's Ayase being a bad. Aside from that, there was a mention from the alien that they're evil people and they broke a promise. And again, they really quickly established this isn't a ghost or a spirit. This is actually an alien. And yes, of course, the idea of how it's able to use the doorbell, it implies that both essentially spirits and aliens have some sort of commonality. I don't know what they're doing with that. Maybe it's powers or something like that, or maybe they're insinuating all aliens are ghosts, or all ghosts are technically aliens, or they both use some sort of similar powers. I don't know. But it was interesting that the alien says that you broke your promise, you're evil people, and then wants a banana. Then wonder, do you still have your banana? No, we established from episode 1 that no, I don't think that's what they're talking about. I still don't think that is what they're talking about when they say banana, because they said they want to, install something into Ayase in the first episode, and then they want to take her uterus and her banana. So there's something else there. I think it's just, in general, their organs for reproduction. But anyhow, that's my thoughts on episode 2 of Dandadan. Really, really enjoying it. I'm glad this second episode has at least given me something else to be just extremely excited about for this series. It keeps kind of adding something to it. We'll see what happens in the next episode. I'm assuming that the grandma's got to show up, maybe, and we'll see how she handles the situation. Anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, hit that like button down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the episode. Additionally, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe before you leave. If you like this content and you want to support the channel more, I have links in the description below. Greatly appreciate what it does. Until next time, y'all take care.